Welcome to the newest episode of the Jesus Cartel. This is episode 53, and you can tell something's different because I am the host this time. Never been the host before, probably not going to be a very good host. But Andrew decided not to show up today, so guess what? I have to be your host. So I'm your host, Clay Russell, and I think we have a guest coming in. Let's see who our guest is. Now, we said that in season 2 we would do things a little different. So I found the prettiest young lady I could possibly find and had her come on as our guest. Will you tell us who you are and what you're doing here?
Well, my name is Courtney Skull. I am Andrew's wife, and I'm here just to chat it up with Clay Russell today.
Well, there you go.
Andrew just dipped on everybody.
Seeing how Andrew's not here. And you know, Andrew left us some notes, but I don't know how to get to them. So there we go. We will have no notes today.
Off to a great start.
We're off to a great start. You know, I always said that being the host is probably not what I would be the best at. I'm usually good at just showing up and answering whatever Andrew says. And I think we're already finding that that's the case because I've lost the notes, you know. So I see all these squiggly little lines and they say that it's recording what we're doing. So that's good. But as far as what we're doing, we're going to wing it now.
All right, here we go.
So, Courtney, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Oh, God. I'm going to be honest with you. Since the kids were born, that's kind of like my definition of what I'm doing. You know, I wouldn't say they're my identity, but I've been busy. So as far as hobbies and extracurriculars, I mean, I love my kids. You know, that is my extracurricular. And I love being a mom, love being a wife, love my husband. And, you know, that's it, really.
Well, something I want to get back to that, but because you said that, there is something that I want to talk about that I know wasn't on the list. Okay. But there is an NFL kicker named Harrison Buckner that he's a kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs. He got asked to speak at his old college, which was a Catholic college, and he is Catholic. And he goes to the Catholic college and speaks at their graduation ceremony. Right? And he says a lot of things over 20 minutes, but he then said that how great of a wife he had and how great of a family they had, and that his wife's life truly started when they started forming a family. Yeah. And he has gained so much hate on this from one side, but he's gained so much notoriety on the other side. In fact, as a kicker, he has the #1 jersey sales right now for the last couple of weeks. And it's all because he basically said that, you know, his wife's got college degrees and she loves the Lord and, you know, she's been successful and everything. But that if you asked her, you know, when did her life truly start, it started with the family. Yeah. So what do you think about that?
Man, I think that in today's time, I can see why it's catching heat. Yeah. But I think that there's a lot of honor in it, honestly. Mm-hmm. You know, I think what women hear when they're trying to defend and say, you know, that he shouldn't have said that. They're saying that she didn't have value, that in her eyes she should have had value before that. And they're saying like, okay, well, you only had value when this started. Right. She had value the whole time, and I don't think she's contesting that. Right. But I think she would say that she valued life differently once that aspect of life started. Amen. And so to me, like, I get that. Amen. I get that because I did play ball. I had a lot of things going, had friends, and active in church, trips, different things like that. But I would say that life just got a little bit sweeter when Andrew and the kids came along. Right. And I'm good with that. I'm happy with that, you know?
Amen. Amen. Yeah, his wife is now a homemaker. She's a stay-at-home mom and has that role. And that's the reason why I wanted to ask you about that. Yeah. You know, I know we kind of got deep pretty quick. I didn't mean to do it like that, but at the same time, that is something that's going on in our society right now. Mm-hmm. You know, he wasn't making less of his wife as a homemaker. He was making more.
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
And so tell us a little bit that, because you've been on both sides. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, like you said, athlete growing up, you know, real involved in sports, real
Yeah.
competitive, you know, you're
Yeah.
getting married, you're a teacher, you have, you know, college degrees
Yeah.
and different things. And then, but recently you've decided to be at home with the kids and homeschool and stuff. And
Yeah.
so talk us through that, you know, the pluses and minuses of being a teacher to many, or being a teacher to your kids, or being in the public and doing those things, and now more focused on your family.
Okay. So while I was working, all I wanted to do was be home.
Mm.
All I wanted to do was be home. That's it. And I remember, you know, I loved my job. I loved teaching. I loved the kids. I wanted to give them the best I could give them. I wanted to help them. I wanted to help their families. Like, I wanted to really serve and serve well. But even in that, and I had a pure heart for the kids, do have a pure heart for the kids. But even in that, I kept thinking, even though I have a great place to send my kids, I couldn't help but feel like, man, I'm leaving mine to go to do this with everyone else's kids. I'm giving them the best of myself. And, you know, obviously it was a job, so it wasn't like, you know, just forsaking your kids and taking off. But, you know, I just couldn't help but feel like, man, I want to be with my kids. I want to raise my kids, because no matter the good hands that you leave them in, it doesn't change the fact that you spend 8 to 10 hours a day. They were spending 8 to 10 hours a day with whoever they were with. Mm-hmm. And then I'm spending my time elsewhere. So I get the last maybe 3 to 4 hours out of the day. And look, every mom, every dad at home at that time knows that is the most chaotic time of the day.
Right.
Because it's like everybody's tired. We're done. It's over with. Everybody's ready to, you got to go through bath time. Like, there's still a routine that has to take place, and that takes time, energy, and focus. It's not just get on the floor and play with your kids. It's like, we got supper to cook. We got stuff going on. But I'll never forget, I was sitting there and looking out the window of the classroom, and I just thought, what are they doing? You know, I want to get up. I want to go. I was getting increasingly disappointed with having to leave them. And we always knew I wanted to come home if I ever could. But we were hitting a point in the game where I was like, it ain't happening. Aria will be in school. I'll miss her. Maybe I get to come home with one of my kids. Who knows? I don't know. And I'll never forget, it was a conversation out of the blue. I had no idea. Andrew was already taking steps. He was making sure everything was in place. I had no clue, but I came home the summer, I think it was like 2020, something like that. Everything was already haywire with school. But I came home, and he was like, I got it. You can come home next year if you want to. And I was like, what? Like, I mean, truly, just surprised. I was so excited, and I just remember the relief of just, because even though my kids were with wonderful people throughout the year, you know, you have things happen on a day-to-day basis where, hey, look, somebody's sick, you know, or we're fine, the schools are good, somebody's sick on the other end. I still got to go to work. They're not going to let me take a kid into my classroom. You know, like, what do you do? And I just remember feeling just such, like, man, it was a weight off my chest. Like, I can come home.
Right.
You know?
And so how long you been doing that now? Golly,
that's been since Aria was 3.
Okay.
So maybe the
close
past,
to 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
4.5.
So now 4 years later, looking at it, and so do you homeschool all 3 girls, or just the 2 oldest?
Just the 2 oldest. This past year more intensely with Aria. She just turned 7. Arlen at the beginning of the year was 4. She'll turn 5 in July, and she was a little less interested, and it was more like force.
Right.
You know, she just wasn't quite ready to start yet. And so I gave her about half a year, and then Aria's a really good teacher, and whatever Aria's doing, Arlen wants to do. So Arlen would start saying, "Oh, Mom, there's my favorite letter," or "Oh, this," you know, she's noticing stuff in stores. And so when she started commenting like that, we started picking up the pace a little bit.
So is it like 2 years difference, or exactly how much difference?
2 years.
2 years. Okay. So from experience, Aria is going to, she's the one that's more inquisitive and learning and everything. But we'll be surprised if Arlen doesn't jump there real quick, just because of that competitive nature that we know that she has, and she's seeing big sister do those things.
I wonder where she got that competitive nature from.
I wonder, probably from both sides.
She got a double dose.
Yep, that could be get to know you segment right there.
Yeah.
And so now looking back at your decision, so you said that's where you really always wanted to be, and then Andrew helped make that happen without you even knowing about it.
Yeah.
You're real relieved. You're able to do it. Yeah. But now we're a few years later. So now that we're looking at it, how are we feeling about those decisions?
Solid.
Yeah.
Solid.
Yeah.
Aria is she is performing well as far as school goes. She's enjoying it. I think the biggest win on the year is that she wants to read by herself all the time. And she's picking up things that are ahead of her technical age or technical level. But seeing her pick that up and run with it has been awesome.
Right.
She's starting to write. She's very creative. And I feel more solid about that now than ever. It's in the beginning, I think it was probably it was a little extreme. That's not, I went to public school, Andrew went to public school. I didn't have any experience with homeschool stuff. I just know that I'm a teacher, I got kids, and I like them close.
Right.
I like to know where they're at. I like to know what they're doing. I like to know, what they're being taught, what's being said or not said. I like that. So I like having my thumb on that a lot.
Well, I know there's a lot of, questions and people asking about homeschooling and stuff. Homeschooling's been around for a long time. It's getting to be a lot more prevalent now for a lot of different reasons. But you are a trained teacher.
Yeah.
So we see a lot of people that, say they're homeschooling or they are homeschooling or whatever, and they're having some challenges. Like you said, it was even some challenges for you.
Yeah.
And you are, a certified trained teacher. So what would be advice to someone that isn't a trained teacher, that, is wanting to attempt this or whatever? What would be some advice there?
Wanting to go home, wanting to come home and teach the kids.
Yeah, wanting to be a homeschool teacher.
I would say to educate yourself as best you can.
Okay.
When you come home, there's a lot of things that, like when the public school system, the curriculum's decided ahead of time. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to think about what you're going to teach. They hand you the book and say, hey, study these, learn these, and do these. Mm-hmm. And so you really don't have a whole lot, or at least for English it was that way. I won't speak for every subject. Mm-hmm. I taught English. So I had a guideline of what was in the lesson and the point that I want to drive home, those kinds of things. I would say educate yourself. Once you do pick a curriculum, study it. Mm-hmm. You need to know what it is. You can't just hop off the cuff and just go with it. And now as a teacher, one of the really cool things you can bring to the table after some time is when you start to get a feel for, okay, here's a gap in this. Let me fill it like this.
Yes.
Hey, let me really, if I set this point up well, the next one will be even easier. Like understanding what the fundamentals are and understanding how to teach kids to think. Because I think that's the biggest thing is that kids don't know how to think. In school when we did math, I was like, okay, if I do it just like this every time, I should get the right answer. Right. And then when I didn't, I'd be like, I did what you said. It's like, that's because it's critical thinking. Right. Yeah, it's not the same every single time. You can't memorize a formula and just get it. But if you can teach them the point of what you're teaching, they can start to manipulate with the why. And then it gets a lot easier from there. But if you're trying to teach the technical aspect, this is how, and they don't know the why, it doesn't matter what they know. They can't use it.
Well, that's the reason why I wanted to ask, because you are trained, and it was still difficult. Mm-hmm. Now, very worth doing and rewarding, but not the easiest thing that you've ever taken on before, Yeah. And the reason I want to ask that is because, used to, we heard of people wanting to go back to college all the time. That was the big deal. I'm going back to college. But then they go back to college and they realize it's still college, right? Well, and it's still hard. You know, there's a reason why you didn't do it before. There's a reason why you didn't finish before. It's still difficult.
Difficult and expensive.
And expensive. And that's the other side of it, you know. And then but the same thing with homeschooling. You know, here you are, you know, I'm going to homeschool now, and but you're not a trained teacher. And why aren't you a trained teacher? Because that was difficult. And well, now it's fixing to be even more difficult because now you're fixing to do something without the training.
Right.
You know, and so now it's not that they can't get the training and can't learn, but it's going to be some work.
Yeah.
You know?
And you know, when you come home, the dynamic of relationship is different.
Right.
You know, when a kid enters a classroom, they go, "That's the teacher. That is her relationship to me. Her job is to teach me,
Right.
and I'm supposed to listen." They know that, even if they don't cooperate with that all the time. They know it, and they know that there's not going to be a soft spot on that. That's her job.
Right.
When you're home and your kids start trying to press buttons or buy time, I think that was the biggest difference when I was in the public school system and you would see someone come in from homeschool. Time management was wildly different.
Yes.
Wildly different. And then so you'd wonder, you know, how come they didn't do so well on this test? They've been managing their own time. They don't have there's no fire burning at home.
Right.
You know, in a public setting or at a job, you're on a timeline, and that timeline does not wait for you.
Right.
And they're not used to that. So I think, you know, the dynamic in a relationship was a lot different because now you have to kind of set that this is the way it's going to go. You have this amount of time to get X, Y, Z done. And a lot of homeschoolers would disagree with me on that, and that's fine. Yeah. But at our house,
they're not on Jesus Cartel, so
right?
It don't matter. Yeah.
Well, you know, I expect this to happen. You have to. Y'all talk about discipline a lot,
right?
And that is a word that I'm coming to value more and more over the years. And if you can't get yourself to do what you know is right, what you know you need to do when nobody is looking, it doesn't matter what you do when everybody's looking,
right?
Because it's not there when no one is.
Right.
And if you can do it when no one's looking, you can do it when everybody's looking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but being disciplined enough to like, hey, do the work.
Right.
Do the work. You're not gonna get better if you don't do the work.
You know, something you talked about at the beginning was you talked about how when you work a regular job and then you come home, you think you got X amount of time with your children, but it's really not X amount of time. And if it is, it's the worst time. And the reason is because you're tired from working all day. They're tired from working all day.
Yeah.
And then we have an agenda. You
right.
know, when we get home, you know.
Yeah. You still have to eat.
Right.
Everybody
we still
has
have to take baths. We have to get our hair did, you know. We got to brush our hair. We can't let it go in knots, you know, and different things like that. You know, I find it funny, you know, in the church sector, a lot of times people mess up and they'll get out of church for a while, and then you're like, well, why didn't you go to church? And they're like, well, because I feel like everybody's talking about me and all that and everything. And we just try to remind people that when we sit at the dinner table and everything, we're not talking about you. You know, we're talking about getting baths. We're talking about getting our hair done. We're talking about what we got to do tomorrow.
Right.
We're talking about trying to deal with some math or a, you know, teacher that's got these expectations.
But
we're not talking about you. We're not talking about you because you've messed up. You know, we're trying to keep us from forgetting our kids in the car, you know, or whatever it is. But so when you're working and then coming home, that's difficult too. You know, and it's difficult to deal with, but you've experienced it from both sides.
Yeah, and I want to say too, that word discipline, it matters wherever you are. And I've noticed over the years that circumstances only highlight what you do or don't have in your character.
Good.
So if you are at work and you're lazy, it's going to show up different at work. If you're at home and you're lazy, it's showing up at home. The problem is that you're carrying it with you.
Right.
So, you know, at work, you know, you miss a deadline, you're going to get chewed out. Now you got a problem with your boss because your boss is, you know, down your throat about this, about, oh my gosh, you got to get this done, got to get this taken care of. And you're like, oh, you know, now you have issues with them. You know, you go home and you're not disciplined, and now it's time for supper. Not that I've done it. It's time for supper and we don't have any dishes.
Right.
You know, like, so now you got to spend 20, 30 minutes getting dishes. To do supper, to do dishes again. You know, those little bitty things matter a lot more than what anybody at home who stays home all the time really wants to admit, because they're functional.
Yeah.
You know, when you need something, you have to make sure it's there.
Yeah.
If you don't make sure it's there, everybody's going.
Right.
And then your nerves are on edge because everybody's like, I'm hungry. You're like, give me 30 minutes, you know.
Right.
And they don't have 30 minutes. They got little tummies and they're ready to eat, you know. So I wouldn't say that I've gone home and just done it perfectly ever since I went home. But I have gotten a lot better over the years.
Well, and there's a lot. I know with my wife, she's always worked. You know, ever since before we had children, she worked, and during children, she worked. In fact, we just buried Miss Annie, who was our, nanny when the girls were growing up and stuff. And she would go get Miss Annie at 5:30, 5:45 in the morning, and take her by the store and get some fried chicken and stuff, and bring it. And Miss Annie would take care of the girls, and Becky would drive to Pineville every day.
Yeah.
An hour and 45 minutes, and work 8 hours and then drive back. And, and it was difficult. And there's a lot. But no matter if you're working a job and then dealing with the children in the evening time, or if you're with them all day, it's all a challenge. It's just a different set of circumstances and a different challenge. So that was kind of our welcome. Hey, Courtney Skull's with us today. There we go. That's our welcome right there. So, hey, we always do a get to know you segment question, and we do have Andrew's wife Courtney with us today. Courtney, how long have y'all been married?
We got married in 2015.
Okay, so like 9 years?
Yeah, we're working on 9.5. We're working on 10. We got married in January of 2015.
Okay, so yeah, we're like 9.5.
Yeah.
And how long?
Been here a minute.
How long did y'all date before that?
About a year, a year and a half maybe.
Right, so
Something
y'all been
like
together a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so probably like right at a third of your life or something like that. You've been with Andrew, right?
Yeah, a third of my life.
There you go. So that leads us into the get to know you segment. Tell us, because Andrew and I have been talking about ourselves for a year, right? I mean, we talk about get to know you segment questions about us, where people get to know us. Yeah. And so just because you're on here doesn't mean that we need to do anything any different.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I still want to talk about Andrew.
Yeah.
I'm not just trying to hear about you.
I love to talk about Andrew.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we're not just trying to.
That's my favorite subject.
We're not just trying to get to know you. We're trying to get to know Andrew through you. So the get to know you segment question is: tell us something weird that we may not already know about the one and only Andrew Skull.
Okay. I get to tell his secrets.
You can tell anything you want to.
Okay.
Weird, different,
weird,
odd.
Different.
It doesn't matter.
I'm going to be honest with you. Andrew's a pretty open book. So I don't know that there's anything that I could say that everybody would be like, oh, did you hear the episode with his wife? He's pretty open. Right. But something that has been just that I've noticed over the years is he's very methodical. Like even in getting ready.
Yes.
Like everything is going to be right here in this order. And he's going to go through that same routine every single day. And he's not going to miss anything almost ever. And if he does, we're all shocked. He was, we were playing pickleball with, we call him Yucatan. Okay. But we were playing pickleball and he said, oh man, you told me to bring this many paddles. He's, no, I told you to. And me and Joe Reasonover looked at each other and was like, I wouldn't put that money up. I wouldn't put that money up. They were trying to joke about it, Yeah. And so I was betting on Andrew, and Yucatan was right. And I was like, the one time, come on.
I would have lost my house.
I publicly backed you. I would have put anything on that. I risked my reputation. I risked everything. But he's very methodical. He's very, I think it's different to hear from me because I know he jokes about it, if I'm not making a mistake, being perfect almost always. Andrew's rarely going to mishandle something. If he mishandles it, he's quick to go, yeah, that was dumb. Yeah. But that is a rare thing. He doesn't miss a whole lot. But as far as weird goes, he just has everything a certain way in the morning. Yeah. He's going to go through that. He's going to go to the same places in the same order every day.
Right. So here's what I got out of our get to know you segment question. What I understand is that Andrew is wrong. So there you go. I like it. We'll take
on
it
the horse's mouth
and keep
right
running
here.
from it. So let's get right into it. So we got viewer questions. We got people wanting to know stuff. The reason
Okay.
why, we wanted to have Courtney on the show is just to offer a different perspective, to be able to, come on here and give a woman's perspective of different things, because Andrew and I have a lot of opinions. We talk a lot. We feel like that they're pretty qualified opinions and straightforward, but getting, some examples or some different opinions or stuff from somebody else is a good thing. So we got Miss Courtney on here. So Courtney, here's the viewer question or one of them is, what do you think are some of the biggest obstacles to women trying to follow Jesus? So you're a Christian woman. You've been following God for a long time. You have an intimate relationship with Jesus. But what do you think is some of the biggest obstacles that you see either yourself or other women trying to follow Jesus?
Okay. I'm going to take a couple seconds and process that one.
I
'cause
got
that's
it.
a big one.
I
But
got
I
it.
really like this question.
And we can start anywhere and go
Okay.
from there.
The biggest obstacles for women trying to follow Jesus, I think, is that we know everyone's role very well.
Okay.
And we are ready to hold everybody's feet to that fire.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes time for us to ask if we're doing what we are supposed to do, we are not good at saying no to that, because we don't like to deal, because women feel a lot of relational pressure, emotional pressure to make sure that they're doing what they should do for other people. We don't want to say, no, I'm not being a good mother when I ... Why? We want to be good mothers.
Yeah.
No, I'm not being a good wife when I ... We want to be good wives. And so if you back up and say, you have to face a lot of emotional reality if you answer that question honest. Because all of a sudden, I don't know if you're familiar with the term gaslit or gaslighting. Okay? Women love throwing that word around. You're gaslighting me. You're gaslighting me. I would say in lots of situations, nobody come for me, we're gaslighting ourselves.
Okay.
Because we see situations, we see people through certain expectation or our preference even a lot of times takes precedence over what's right and what's okay. I think one of the biggest things with moms is like, man, we want to be right there. We want to make sure they do it in the most effective, most productive way. The kid's not concerned with coloring their color sheet the right colors. They don't care if the elephant is purple.
Right.
They don't care. They're just having fun. And we're like, no, the elephant is gray. It's great. Look, let's color the sky blue. They're like, I want to do a rainbow. It's their picture. But a lot of times we have our own preference and we have our own vision of the way something should take place or the way something should happen. And if it doesn't happen that way, our immediate response is, oh, no, 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 no. That's wrong. And we're ready, because as a Christian woman, I've read that, don't provoke your kids. I know that we're supposed to submit to each other, not just me to you, and it's not supposed to be that way. So I know your role and you're not doing it. So let me just tell you about it. Right. So the second that you get emotional, you get upset, you see things go in a certain way, and you change your disposition, the way you treat your husband, the way you treat your children because of how they didn't meet your preference, you are not feeling your role.
Right.
You are supposed to be kind. You are supposed to be merciful.
Right.
You are supposed to be the one to show grace. And people make mistakes, and it's not that you have to say, yeah, keep making those. You don't have to do that. But I think the one thing I keep hearing in my mind is you're not supposed to be everybody's Holy Spirit.
Right.
You can't make everybody decide. Every mama wishes that they could make their kids to decide to follow Jesus. I wish I could make every decision for you and make you eat this way and make you work this hard and we want to make those decisions because we want good. But you're robbing them when you do that, because the more pressure you put, the more they're going, I don't like this.
Right.
And Christianity and loving the Lord is a matter of the heart. It's not a matter of do like I said all the time. It's a matter of loving the Lord because you've seen his goodness. And we're trying to lay down the law so that he'll see his goodness, you know. And I just think that a lot of times preference gets in the way, and what you think it's supposed to be gets in the way, and it enables us to act in ways that are unbecoming.
Right.
And it's unloving, it's unkind, it's not Christ-like character, but we excuse it because, well, you stepped out of line first, and I had to get a pin in that. It's like if I let this go, it's a lack of trust in the Lord completely. Because
Right.
what we're saying is, if I don't tell you, you ain't gonna do it.
Right.
You know, we're trying to get immediate gratification from everything going like we think it should.
So the woman, you know, even though she understands that, you know, her husband is the leader of the house, she's the one taking care of stuff, and she's mother bear trying to make sure that everything happens. But when it doesn't happen, it can be controlling, and it can be difficult.
And that's where women get that rap.
Right, and so and then it's controlling, and then when you try to look at, okay, well, now where's your relationship with Jesus at?
Right.
And you're trying to control everybody else's and everything that's going on. It seems like that's where it can be difficult.
Right.
So they got the right heart, and they're trying to people please, and they want everything to be right. But at the same time, it seems like a lot of women, you know, put themselves on the back seat, and they put their relationship with God on the back seat, trying to make sure everybody else's is okay.
Yeah. I don't think that women understand our purpose. I don't think that women understand that well at all, because, and I'm just gonna throw this in there, this crossed my mind a second ago, and
We're good.
it's
We're
just
open.
it's golden to me. One of the things from the fall is that a woman would want to reign over her husband. She's wanting to be the boss. She wants to control and take over his role. You know, that's where a lot of marital fights come from.
And that happened with the fall of man and Adam and
Right.
Eve in the garden, right?
Right.
Okay.
So the whole thing is like, you're gonna want to control your husband, and I can just tell you, if you can whoop him in a fight, he's not attractive to you. You're not going to want him. So the whole trick of the whole thing is that you think, okay, well, I'm going to try to take care of this. I'm going to have this done my way. I'm going to, you know, and women start trying to manipulate things and trying to, you know, have you ever had somebody ask you a question they know the answer to?
Right.
Like, hey, do you want to go to McDonald's later? And you go, no. And they go like, oh, well, you know, like
Right.
what they meant was, I'd like for us to go to McDonald's.
Right.
But what they're trying to do is make it your fault, trying to make it your idea. But I just feel like women a lot of times are trying to manipulate, make things happen, make things fall a certain way so that it fits and it goes like it's supposed to go. But in reality, you know, you're manipulating that dude. And if you can whoop him in a verbal fight, an emotional fight, a physical fight, he's the last dude you want to be hitched to.
Right.
You know, so the trick is, you want to be the boss, but you don't really want the boss. You don't want, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
you don't want a boss that you can outwit,
Right.
you know? But
And that can be problematic, and we
it's
see
very
that.
problematic.
Right.
Because it's a cycle, you know? You're trying to control, and you win. Okay, great. Now you're not attracted to your husband. And now you got marital problems that you didn't know were coming.
So we tell guys that a lot of times, and they don't listen to us. But we tell guys all the time is, don't tell, especially when you're new into a relationship, don't tell a woman that this is where I stand at if you aren't strong enough to stand in that position.
Oh, yeah.
Because so many times the woman will see, and she will try you just to see if you will really stand in that or not, just to see if you will or not. And then when you don't, she has no use for you anymore, because now she knows that you don't believe in what you say.
You soft.
That's it. That's
Legit.
right. You're
You
not a
want
man
that.
of integrity.
You can't stand on that. I always knew when I got married, I was like, I want to marry somebody smarter than me. I'm just going to say it for the world to hear. Andrew is smarter than me. And I like that, and I don't like that all at one time. Because a lot of times he's thinking in a way that's totally different than what I was thinking. But once he sits down and says, hey, this is why I'm seeing it this way, I go, oh. You know, but in some cases, maybe I've already stepped out. Maybe I've already started responding a certain way, and it's not fitting for the moment. So you have, in that moment, you have to go, okay. And that's not a bad thing.
Right.
But if you're trying to, you know, prove yourself or feel secure, it's not cool to do that, because then you're like, oh, you know, now I look like this. Oh, now I look like it. Well, you could double down and look like more of an idiot.
Right.
You know, like when you're wrong and you double down on being wrong and you try to explain to the world and convince everybody that you're right while subconsciously you know you're wrong, you just sound exponentially stupid.
Right.
You know, and then as this is all playing out in front of everybody, what your dude is going to see is, all right, so this is what we're working with.
Yeah.
And now you want to be in the loop. You want to understand. You want to be included. Well, if you're wrong, you're acting like a psychopath.
Right.
So what's the man left to do other than try to make some good decisions and see if you go along with it, you know? But I don't even remember the first question.
It is okay. We're doing good.
I tacked that gold nugget on and I went a whole nother way.
No, you did good. We're just asking about challenges that women go through as far as their relationship with Jesus, because it is different than men's.
Yeah.
Obstacles. We all have different obstacles that we have to deal with, and it seems like with a woman, it's a lot of it's just finding her purpose, finding her place, finding the balance between being the husband, being the wife, being the the mom, being the teacher, being the follower of Christ, all those things.
You got me right back on, because when you said purpose, I got it.
You bet.
People don't understand their purpose, because if you think your job is to have a successful marriage, have successful children, you fit yourself into this role. Like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to have, and I'm only meeting my purpose and useful as long as these things are working out. Nobody is here to be married. Nobody is here to be a mother. Nobody's here to be a father. Nobody's here to hold a certain job. You're here to look like Christ.
Amen.
And that's it. And I think that small perspective shift changes everything. So if your marriage is so high on the list of priorities that looking like Christ falls here, now your character in Christ is subject to whatever your husband is
That's
or
right.
isn't doing.
That's right.
But if in your mind and in your heart you're going, okay, today I woke up to look like Jesus, that's it. It's such a protective place, because love keeps no record of wrongs. So guess what you're not doing in the car on the way somewhere? I wish I would have said this, or I could have said, you don't have all that. That takes so much mental energy, and it's fruitless time.
Right.
That everybody has spent at some point or another wishing they would have said something else. But if you see, like, I'm here to look like Jesus, I'm here to lay my life down for my family. Now we don't have the argument of who should do the dishes. Are there dishes? Cool. Did you see them? Yes. Your job.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
Hey, did you do 4 loads today? Yes. Did you see them then? Yes. Those were also your job. It's not about, that we have it's not about your rights. And we love rights. We want ourselves protected. It's self-centeredness, because when you're trying so hard to protect yourself, you surely can't lay yourself down. You're too busy. And Jesus said it. If you seek to save your life, you will lose it. The more you seek to get your way, have your rights respected, and make sure he knows this, and make sure those kids don't talk to you like this, the more life is draining from your heart and soul, because you're so focused on these issues. But if you're, okay, I'm here to lay my life down, and no matter, love keeps no record of wrongs. I don't care how they talk to me today. I don't care what he said. I don't care. It doesn't matter. I love my family, and I'm here to lay my life down and show Christ to my family. That's such a protective place, because Jesus said, hey, look, if they say this kind of stuff about you, just be grateful, okay? Be grateful and keep rocking. He set you up with perspectives for you to win every time. You want to insult me? Cool, I'll bless you. I got you. And guess what? That's registered.
Right.
He heard that. He knows that. And that's fruit that stands forever. Because at the end of everything, if it's not love, it's getting burned up anyway.
Yeah.
Love is the point. So if you're not loving people, and we're sitting here fighting about our rights and what you shoulda, coulda, woulda, and why can't I, and this isn't enough, you're wasting time.
Right.
Time that you're not going to get back. Ari's birthday, that's the one thing that kept just checking in with me. You're not getting it back. This is it. You got one shot at today. Yep. You got one shot to love your kids. You got one shot to love your husband. And as much as you'll live for, you don't know that. You got no clue. No clue when you're tagging out of here. And you might as well leave a legacy while you're here, and don't squander it.
Amen. When you talk about that focusing, in that area and different things like that, it made me think about it's the same way with the law. Focusing on the law just makes you conscious of sin.
Right.
Focusing on all this record of wrongs and rights, and he said this and they did that and everything, it's just going to make you more miserable. I mean, that's
Right.
all it is. It just makes you conscious of, I failed as a wife, or I failed as a mother, or if he really saw me this way, then he wouldn't say this or he wouldn't do that.
Right.
No, he's living in a fallen world too.
Right.
I mean, and so, and we're raising kids. They call it raising kids for a reason. we're taking somebody with the sin nature on the inside of them, and we're raising them to be like Christ. And
Right.
so that's going to have some ups and downs and all arounds. And so that's what I was thinking about is if we focus on the difficulties and we focus on the law,
Yeah.
all it does is make us more conscious of the problems and the sin and
Right.
stuff.
And God will fade to the background.
Right.
And all of a sudden, he'll even be a problem because you prayed about those. You asked him to change that man. You asked him to rescue your children. You asked him to meet this financial need. You asked him for that, and he didn't answer, which means technically he said no. And he could have, but he didn't. So why not? So now all of a sudden, even God's love
and
is
if
in
he
question.
loved you, right.
Right. And
Right.
you can't, if Jesus said, I'm the representation of the Father. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And they're like, well, show us the Father. He's like, if you've seen me, you've seen him. I only do what he says do. I only say what he says to say. I'm doing exactly what he would do if he were here. And that's why everybody is on the planet. That's why you're here. Is the problem is exactly what you said. We're living in a fallen world where sin has entered. It has been a problem. But if Jesus is the representation of the Father, his love is answered on the cross. If he didn't love you, then why did he die?
Right.
Why would he even give up his own life, his only son? For what? I don't know about anybody else. I can't speak for anybody's love for their children. But if I'm sending Arya to the grave over you,
Right.
you better know that you mean something.
Something.
Because I can tell you right now, I ain't sending her. I love that kid. But I think that speaks to the perspective of God, though, because he did.
Right.
We won't. He did.
Yeah.
So he had to see something. I'm not paying my daughter for nothing.
Right.
I'm not depositing that for nothing. But he did deposit his son, and he did see something that he wanted to get done and saw valuable enough that temporary price was worth it to have this on the other side of forever.
Right.
Like that matters a lot. And your unmet bills and your unmet needs are outside of love. I have to say that too while I'm here. Needs are outside. Need and love don't operate together because love doesn't seek its own. Need is all about what I have to be okay.
Right.
That's self. But that's the perspective to me. That's like, Jesus loved you so much. He saw something on this side, deposited his son. You better be asking the question what he was after. And if you don't know the answer for yourself, you might ought to start asking a little harder and seeking some people out, seeking the Lord.
Well, and quit looking at, like you said, your needs and your desires and those kind of things.
Yeah.
A revelation that I've gotten, recently, just a little more clear, is that we all say that God's ways are higher than our ways, right? We always say God's ways are higher than man's ways, but yet we want God to operate the way we want him to operate.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
Exactly. Oh, he's smarter than me, but do what I said. Or
right.
else.
Or else. Yeah, right. And the or else is the problem. Or either,
Right.
or else I'm not going to follow you. Or else I'm
Right.
not going to respond to my husband the way you tell me to.
I'm
or
not
my
submitting
kids.
to that.
Right.
Yeah. Like that
Right.
attitude, that brings up a really good point too, because we're talking about the purpose of a woman, and not understanding what your purpose is. Inside of marriage, your purpose is still to follow Christ. The man is supposed to represent Christ to the church. The woman is supposed to represent the church to Christ. Submission is an ugly word in 2024.
Right.
It is a bad word. And if you say submission, every woman is going to go, oh no, honey. No. What has he said to you? What is he saying behind closed doors?
Right.
Like really good things is what Andrew's saying to me.
Right.
But the thing is, submission is supposed to be a beautiful thing. It's a good, right thing. The Father, Son, Holy Spirit, they all work together all the time.
Yeah.
I don't see the Holy Spirit go, I don't think I got enough attention. Or Jesus go, hey, look, we're making a whole lot of the Holy Spirit right now. Really what he couldn't do what he's doing if I didn't do what I did.
Right.
You know, and I don't see God throwing a fit over, I made it to y'all, nobody's noticing. Like, they all work in tandem. They all work together, and they like to show each other off. Mm-hmm. And so submitting to one another doesn't mean you domineer and you power play me and I cave.
Right.
That's what people think submission is. Submission is when a husband is lovingly and tenderly leading his wife. That's easy to say yes to. Okay, let's go. And then submission is sometimes, now that's the ideal submission, I think, in a woman's mind, is that's, someone's being tender and kind and watchful over you and trying to lead you into something good. And that's easy to say yes to, but I'm going to be honest, sometimes we're stubborn, and you can even do that. And we'll be like, no. Why? Because I don't want to. It was your idea. Yeah. But we're supposed to be submissive regardless. And if your husband makes this financial decision and says, hey, look, we're going to do this, I'm letting you know this is a decision I've made. It's not something that I think that we really need to chat about, because I can tell this is going to be a good idea. And you're like, we'll see. We'll see. You can't be, let's just say that idea goes poorly. You can't be on the other side going, if only you had someone to consult with. The last thing that you want is somebody throwing wrong in your face. Mm-hmm. But you're supposed to be there to go, hey, you made a decision? Cool, let's make it work. And you make it work to the best of your ability. And if it flops, you can't be the reason it didn't.
Right.
Like if you're cooperating and you go with that, and let's just say it fleshes out. Man, this is a good idea. And either way, it's not your fault.
Right.
Submission is a good thing. And I think a lot of women get a little upset if it's not exactly like that ideal situation I described. They're like, he did. Conditional love was never on the table. It was never supposed to be on the table.
Right.
Never. Conditional submission. Now, hear me. I'm not saying, get beat up on and let that slide. And, okay, right. That's not what I'm talking about. But submitting to what your husband feels is best for your family and will be good for your family, sometimes whether you like it or not, okay, and rock with it.
Yeah. Hitting it from just another side of it is that just because the man is the leader in the house doesn't mean that the woman can't come up with great ideas too and stuff, and for the family, and and that's where you're submitted to each other and you're working together. You said that the woman could say, well, I just don't want to. Well, what about if the guy said that the woman offers a great idea and and he goes, well, I'm not saying it's not a good idea, I just don't want to do it because you come up with it. That's weird, And,
it is weird.
It's weird.
And he'd be under fire all the more.
Right. And because, you talked about you wanted to be with a man that was smarter than you. I wanted to be with a woman that was smarter than me, I like both sides of it. Yeah. We've talked about this on here before, but a lot of the rooms that I go into, I'm the smartest person in the room. I don't like that.
Right.
I like to go in the rooms where I'm not the smartest person in the room.
Right.
I liked having this conversation today because it hits from a whole different perspective.
Yeah.
And Andrew and I agree on most everything, and so I want to hear a different angle, and I want him to hear a different angle, and that's the reason why we're trying to, do things a little different in Jesus Cartel in season 2, but hear things from a different angle and stuff. But man, I am always open to learning, and growing and stuff. Now, because God has put me in leadership positions and because he has made me a leader over certain things, including my home and different things, I'm going to make that final decision.
Right.
But I love to have as much good qualified feedback as possible ahead of making that decision.
Right.
So if you do have a man that's not listening to anybody or anything and he's not following God, then hey, that is difficult to submit to.
Sure.
But if your husband is loving the Lord and putting him at the center of everything and surrounding himself with people that love the Lord, that can help and give a good advice, he's probably going to be on the money.
You're right.
Right.
And I think about sports. You're not going to try something the first time and nail it perfect.
Right.
So as men, you talked earlier about, we're raising kids, you've got people with a sin nature, maybe not even born again yet.
Right.
And even after you get born again, there's a learning curve. You're trying to readjust to
Renewing
this
the mind,
new
right.
mind. And, you know, and sometimes as you're adjusting and as you're making these moves, it's better, but it may not nail it. You know, and you can't hold somebody to this idea of this is what would have been great, and you didn't do that. Yeah, but hang on. Like, he's gotten better.
Right.
And you have to acknowledge that. And something else I wanted to tack back to is like you're talking about providing for a family, making the decisions for a family. The weight and pressure and responsibility of that is something that I don't think, as a Christian man and as Christian women, that's not something that I think women fully understand. I understand there's single moms, there's working women, and I'm not knocking that. That's heavy, probably even heavier because you're not supposed to carry it alone. But for my family, you know, I don't work. I'm at home with the kids, so I don't work for a wage. Okay, it's hard work, you know, but I'm not working for a wage. Whatever comes into our home is off his time, off his energy, off of his whatever.
Right.
So the weight of that responsibility and the accountability that I feel like a man has to the Lord for the direction and spiritual maturity of his family is not something I think that women fully get. Because Christian women know that technically, I'm saying technically, I really meant that, I did air quotes. But
okay.
Technically, that's on him. So if the Lord's going to look at it and go, okay, what are we doing? What's the Skull family doing? He's not coming to ask me.
Right.
He's going to be like, hey, I'm leading you to do this. What's going on?
Right.
You know, that's a heavy thing. And I think that just another little golden nugget, I think women and men miss each other because you're not trying to see the other person's perspective. Where a lot of times we're trying to talk so much so that you understand. And then they do the same thing back. I'm trying to be understood. And you're missing each other in the process. Like, if you would just look and think what this must be like. If Andrew lost a job, he won't. But, I mean, I'm saying that to you. You're his boss. Clay's like, oh.
Let's keep going.
You know, but he won't lose a job based off of something he does wrong. But if something happened and y'all had to make cuts,
Right.
that's a heavy weight of responsibility because now
He's the income.
he's the income.
Right.
You know, and making decisions for your family and direction and stuff. It's heavy. And the last thing that you need, or it can be heavy, but I feel like the last thing that someone in that position really needs is someone who's supposed to be there to say, hey, let's tackle this plan, let's knock this out, going, hold up, why are you saying that? What are we doing? I don't want to do that.
Right.
No, I don't think I will. You know what? No, I'm not going to teach your kids that. No. Like,
Yeah, it's difficult. I
That's
know
hard.
When Becky and I started, you know, I was in the insurance business and I was gone a good bit. And, you know, and she took care of so much, you know, and everything. And we're both producing income and stuff, but she's home more than I am, but not much, you know, she's
Right.
working hard. And so when she would tell me that something was broke around the house or whatever, I would take it personal.
yeah. What
You
do you
know,
mean? What do
and-
you mean I'm not doing a good job?
Right. So it would bother me that,
Yeah.
you know, that the washing machine's broke or whatever, and I'm in Alabama.
Right.
You know, and so it'll mess with your mind a little bit that, hey, I'm not doing my job. I'm not performing the way I'm supposed to. I know I'm driving 8 hours away and staying in hotels that I don't want to stay in and away from my kids.
Right.
But the washing machine's broke. You know,
Right.
and so if I didn't, you know, have a wife that would be like, you know, hey, the washing machine's broke, how would you like me to take care of it? Do
Yeah.
you want to call somebody? Do you want me to call somebody? Do you know who we need to call? You know, is there, you know, what do we need to do? If she didn't hit it from that angle, it could bother me quick. You
Right.
know, because I feel like that's my responsibility.
Yeah.
And so that, you know, that's a small example, but like you said, when you're the only one bringing in the income of the family, you know, that is a lot of weight and a lot of burden.
Well, even that, just another light on that, that's more money out of your pocket. You got to be going a little bit longer because the washing machine's broke.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right. Yeah.
Everything
and try a little
costs-
harder and make the next sale and work extra hours.
Right.
And those kind of things. And
We're
so
real familiar with that right now.
Right. So you want to come home quicker, but you can't because
Right.
there you are.
Yeah, you're working real hard to provide. I think that was probably the biggest thing early on for me and Andrew was like I was just real like time. I just to the point where I don't know if you've ever been pressured into something. You may have wanted to do something before, but by the time somebody has said it for the 15th time, you're like, look,
oh yeah,
let's just don't. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, but when time is the requirement and or what your wife is saying the requirement is, but so is time is also necessary to make money.
Right.
You've got to feed everybody, and so if you got a woman mad at you for not spending time with her, but you're spending all of your time to provide for her, you know, in her mind she's like, well, that's just not what I wanted. You know, and I'm gonna be transparent. I've done that.
Right.
But
and
that's
the next time you need
weighty.
something around the house, he's like, well, we just don't have the money.
Right.
You know, and that's
Right.
difficult.
It would be much easier to just say, you know, one of the things we started saying was like, I send Andrew, you know, not on my behalf, but I used to try to keep them close and just keep them in the house. And it's like, first of all, that is boring. I'm
Right.
going to admit that
Right.
openly sometimes. Sometimes it is boring. But, you know, I would try to keep them close. And I just, now it's like, well, you know what? Such and such is having a hard day, or not just over a hard day, but like somebody's in like you work at Fresh Start. You understand that when crisis hits, sometimes it's do or die.
Right.
Literally. This conversation gets had and it goes well, or it doesn't, and it goes really bad. And I've come to understand that and go, we can afford 15 minutes on the phone. Mm-hmm. We can handle that. You know, and Andrew's real careful to make sure that he's spending plenty of time. But hey, that phone call comes at what I would call an inconvenient time or whatever. Somebody's life might be on the line. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's Joe trying to say something crazy to him. I don't know. But nonetheless, you got that. You busting your tail. I think you can have a friendly conversation for a second, you know, and be okay. But the big thing is sending them. It's like, if we're one, if you're there, I'm there. You know, if it matters to you, it matters to me.
Well, and that's something that you said that I want to piggyback off of. Even if, you know, your husband, you know, does love the Lord, he's doing things the right way, and makes a decision without you, mm-hmm. you know, your job, even if he didn't ask you to be a part of it, is to be right there and to help, you know. And Becky and I do some things, you know, we got a real estate business and stuff, and I'm usually the one that makes decisions if we buy stuff and everything.
Right.
But then she's the one that has to kind of manage it and take care of a lot of it and stuff. And she doesn't gripe about it, you know, that's her role. She's not, you know, her mindset isn't into the buying and selling as much as it is into the everyday management side of it. Yeah. And we both do both. But I'm just saying, it's not like she goes, well, that's his project, he can deal with it.
Right.
You know, no, this is something that we're doing for our family.
Yeah.
You know, and is it time consuming? Sure it is. Have we counted the cost? Sure we have. It's kind of like you being at home with the children, and you were talking about, you know, different things a while ago as far as the time and stuff. That's the reason why I wanted to ask you, you know, what made you make the decision to come home? But then I also want to follow up with that and say, okay, now did we make a good decision?
Right.
Because every decision that we make isn't always perfect, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, but now I want to look at it and say, okay, in 2020, when you made that decision, do you think that was the right decision?
Yeah.
Okay, well, was it the right decision in 2021? Is it still the right decision today?
Right.
Hey, it's okay for us to look at things like that.
And I think that's something that, as far as women go, you know, you're talking about earlier, you know, the washing machine broke, and it's like, oh, it can hit you a funny way if it's brought up a certain way. But, like, look, you can know where something's from based off the fruit. You can look at the fruit and know where it came from. Right. You know, you can do that with mindsets even. You know, is it producing condemnation? Is it producing guilt? Is it producing a cycle in your life where you're just doing the same thing over and over and over? All right, well, we can just determine right now that's right out of hell. Right. That's obvious. But if you sit down and look at what's going on, what's actually taking place, how are my kids benefiting from this? What have they gained versus not gained? You know, what are lost? Like, women, you've got to be able to take yourself out of it. Take the offense out. Because I think as women, we want men to communicate. We want to hear what you're saying, but if you're blowing up every time he tries to bring something that's not going well to your attention, he's not going to talk to you because you're volatile. Now you're part of the whole big issue,
right?
Rather than being somebody who can help in the situation. Like, hey, if you've done 4 loads of laundry today and there's another one and he goes, I was really hoping we would have these, knocked out by now. You can't go, well, let me tell you what I did today.
Right.
Because now he can't bring that up,
right.
And there's things that I think women have done a good job of making sure men can't talk to them about.
Right.
Because you're trying to remove any kind of accountability for it. It's like, look, I hate dishes and laundry as much as the next person. But nonetheless, if the sink is full, the couches and everything else that we bought to exercise on has become a clothes hanging place, right. Where do we, if he looks at you funny, like, where do we sit? You can't blow up.
Right.
Like
right.
He's being functional. You know what I'm saying? Things aren't functioning.
Yep.
But if you take yourself out of it and just really look at like, okay, how can we do this another way?
Yep.
It's not just because somebody brings something up to you doesn't mean it's an accusation.
And that's not just for a woman. That's for anybody. That's for anybody following Christ. Anybody wanting to be better. Opening up yourself to looking at self-assessing and those kind of things is a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, look, we have answered one question, and we're out of time. But I don't know if we're ever going to allow you to come back. So is there anything else that you would like to tell our Jesus Cartel audience in case this is your last time you ever get to talk to them?
Yeah. I want you to hear it from me that Andrew really is that good.
Amen.
He really is. He really is. And I can say that with a clear mind. I don't have any checkups. No, like, did you just lie to an audience? Nope. Amen. He really is a good dude. And he really is. He really does rarely make mistakes. And I appreciate him, and I appreciate everything he does. And I could talk about it more, but I'm not going to cry on the Jesus Cartel. That man has sacrificed more and done more for me than anybody will ever know, and more than he'd ever admit to anybody, even if you told him.
Amen.
And I just wanted that to be known, because I think the biggest question people have for me is like, "Are you okay?" Like, yeah, I understand what you're saying. His sense of humor can be intense at times, right. But if you know his heart. It's a big plus.
Amen. Well, look, we love y'all, and we'll see y'all next week on the Jesus Cartel.
You'll see them next week.
I'll see them next week.
You may never see me again. We'll find out.
See y'all later.